I am Cheryl, 58 years old, and I built a beautiful life and home with my late husband, Frank. Never would I have imagined my own daughter, Abigail, and her husband, Tyler, would betray me so cruelly. Being kicked out of the home I poured my heart and soul into was devastating. The words still ring in my ears: go to the dump. But what they didn't know was that I had an ace up my sleeve. If you're ready to hear how I turned heartbreak into an unexpected triumph, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to stay for what happens next. Frank and I were married for 35 wonderful years before cancer took him from me 2 years ago. We purchased our charming farmhouse on 5 acres when we were just starting out, barely able to afford the down payment. The place was practically falling apart back then. Leaky roof, creaky floors, outdated everything. But we saw its potential. This will be our forever home. Frank had said, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he swung me around in what would eventually become our living room. Over the decades, we renovated every square inch ourselves. Frank was incredibly handy, and I learned alongside him. We laid hardwood floors on weekends, installed kitchen cabinets during summer vacations, and planted a gorgeous garden that became the envy of all our neighbors. Every corner of that house held memories. The height marks of our growing daughter on the kitchen doorframe, the small chip in the bathroom sink from when Frank dropped a tool while installing it, the window seat where I would read to Abigail when she was little. I worked as a nurse for 20 years at the local hospital, a career I loved deeply, but after Abigail went to college, I took a risk and started my own small business making handcrafted soaps and candles. What began as a hobby blossomed into a successful venture, eventually allowing me to leave nursing and focus on my passion. Frank supported me every step of the way, converting our garage into a workshop and helping at craft fairs on weekends. When Frank was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, our world shattered. The prognosis was grim from the start, but we fought hard. I cut back my business hours to care for him, becoming his full-time nurse during those final months. We spent those precious days reminiscing about our life together, sitting on our back porch watching sunsets when he felt strong enough. "Promise me you'll keep living, Cheryl," he had whispered one evening. "This house needs your light in it." After he passed, the grief was all-consuming. I barely left our bedroom for weeks, the pain too raw to function. But slowly, with the support of friends and some grief counseling, I began to find my footing again. I reopened my small business, finding comfort in the familiar routines and creative work. Throughout it all, my relationship with Abigail had its ups and downs, as most mother-daughter relationships do. She was our only child born after years of trying, and we adored her. As a teenager, she went through a rebellious phase that tested my patience, but Frank always knew how to bridge the gap between us. I sacrificed much for her education, taking extra nursing shifts to afford the private college she had her heart set on. We even refinanced our home to help with her tuition, wanting to give her every opportunity we never had. Abigail met Tyler during her junior year of college. Their romance was fast and intense. He was studying business and had big dreams of entrepreneurship. When she first brought him home, something about him set off warning bells in my mind. He was charming, perhaps too charming, and I noticed how his eyes assessed everything in our home as if calculating its value. But I kept these concerns to myself, not wanting to interfere in my daughter's happiness. "Mom, he's the one." Abigail had declared, her eyes shining with the certainty of young love. They married 3 years ago when Abigail was 27. Frank was already sick by then, but he rallied for the wedding, determined to walk his daughter down the aisle. It was a beautiful day, and seeing Abigail so happy brought us genuine joy despite everything else we were facing. After their wedding, the young couple struggled financially. Tyler had trouble finding a job that matched his lofty ambitions, and Abigail was still establishing herself in her marketing career. Frank and I helped them with rent several times, and when they needed a car, we co-signed their loan. I never minded. That's what family is for, after all. 6 months ago, Abigail announced she was pregnant. I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. With Frank gone, this new life represented hope and continuation. I started knitting baby blankets and buying little outfits, eager to welcome my grandchild into the world. Little did I know that this happy news would set in motion events that would upend my entire life. The first signs that something was changing with Abigail appeared gradually after her marriage. My vibrant, warm-hearted daughter became more distant, checking in less frequently and seeming distracted when we did talk. Initially, I attributed this to the natural separation that comes with marriage and building her own life. "She's just busy with her new husband." I told myself, ignoring the knot in my stomach that suggested otherwise. When they visited for dinner, I noticed how Tyler would make decisions for both of them, ordering Abigail around with subtle commands disguised as suggestions. Abigail doesn't want dessert, he once said, removing the plate I had just set in front of her. She said nothing, just offered a tight smile. Our first serious argument happened about a year into their marriage. Tyler came to Sunday dinner and spent the entire time criticizing my home. "This place is so outdated," he remarked, running his finger along my cherished vintage hutch. "All this old furniture must be worth something to collectors, though, right?" When I defended our home, explaining the history and sentimental value of each piece, Abigail surprisingly took his side. "Mom, you really should consider updating some things. This place looks like it belongs to someone from another century." Her words stung. This was the home she grew up in, filled with memories we had created together. I couldn't understand how she could dismiss it so easily. I later learned more about Tyler's background from conversations with Abigail. His parents, Sandra and Robert, were quite wealthy, old money from real estate investments. They lived in a modern mansion in an exclusive neighborhood and had raised Tyler with every privilege imaginable. According to Abigail, they had high expectations for their son's lifestyle and were disappointed that he and Abigail weren't living more luxuriously. "They just want what's best for us," Abigail explained after one particularly uncomfortable phone call with her in-laws that I overheard. Sandra and Robert began visiting more frequently, each time making barely concealed critical comments about my home. "Such a quaint little place." Sandra would say the word quaint, dripping with condescension. "It must be so challenging to keep clean at its age." Robert once asked if I had considered selling. "Property values in this area have skyrocketed. You could make a killing and get something more suitable." To maintain peace, I began accommodating their increasing requests during visits. I would cook elaborate meals to Sandra's specifications, rearrange furniture to Robert's liking, and stay quiet when they discussed politics I disagreed with. My home no longer felt like my sanctuary during these visits, but I endured it for Abigail's sake. During one dinner, Robert mentioned casually, "We've been thinking of moving closer to be near our future grandchild." The room fell silent. I looked at Abigail, who quickly averted her eyes. Something unspoken hung in the air, and a chill ran down my spine. After that, I noticed Abigail and Tyler having whispered conversations that would abruptly stop when I entered the room. Tyler would look at my living room with calculating eyes, sometimes taking photos for decorating ideas. Abigail began asking unusual questions about the house deed and Frank's will. My anxiety grew as I felt increasingly like a stranger in my own home. Longtime neighbors commented on how they rarely saw me in the garden anymore. The truth was, I felt uncomfortable working outside when Tyler's parents might drive by with their judging eyes. I tried several times to have an honest conversation with Abigail about my concerns. "Sweetheart, is everything okay? You seem different lately." I ventured one afternoon while we were folding laundry together. "Everything's fine, Mom. You're just being paranoid," she responded dismissively. "Maybe you should talk to someone about your anxiety since Dad died." Her deflection hurt deeply. She was right that I'd struggled with grief, but I knew my concerns about her relationship with Tyler were valid. Still, I backed down, not wanting to push her away further. I began to doubt myself, wondering if I truly was imagining problems where none existed. As Abigail's pregnancy progressed, she became even more distant. She stopped coming over to help with my business as she used to decline invitations for lunch, and when we did talk, the conversations were superficial. The daughter who once told me everything now seemed like a polite acquaintance. I found myself lying awake at night replaying conversations and interactions as trying to pinpoint exactly when and why things had changed. The home that had been my comfort through losing Frank now felt like a battleground, and I was losing ground daily without understanding the war being waged. Everything changed during what I thought would be a normal Sunday dinner. I had spent the entire day preparing Abigail's favorite meal, pot roast with all the trimmings, followed by apple pie made with fruit from our own trees. I wanted to create a warm, loving environment where perhaps we could reconnect. When the doorbell rang, I was surprised to see not just Abigail and Tyler, but his parents as well. They hadn't been invited, and no one had mentioned they would be joining us. "Hope you don't mind us crashing," Robert said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sandra and Dad were in the neighborhood and decided to stop by," Tyler explained, though something in his tone seemed rehearsed. Of course not. I lied quickly, calculating if I had enough food for 2 more people. Everyone is welcome. Throughout dinner, I noticed strange glances being exchanged between Abigail Tyler and his parents. They seemed to be communicating silently, and occasionally Sandra would give an almost imperceptible nod to Abigail. The conversation felt stilted with long, awkward pauses. The roast is a bit dry, Sandra commented, though it was perfectly cooked. We had dinner at the Capitol Grill last night, Robert added. Now that was a meal worth having. I swallowed my hurt and kept serving, trying to maintain a pleasant atmosphere despite the obvious tension. After dessert, as I began clearing dishes, Tyler cleared his throat dramatically. Cheryl, we actually have something important to discuss with you. Maybe we should move to the living room. My heart began to race as I followed them. We settled into the living room with me sitting alone in my armchair, while the 4 of them took positions on the couch and love seat a united front facing me. Mom, Abigail began, her voice oddly formal. We have some exciting news. My mind immediately went to the pregnancy. Perhaps they had learned the baby's gender or had chosen a name they wanted to share. Tyler's parents have decided to sell their house and move closer to us for when the baby comes. I forced a smile. That's wonderful. I'm sure they'll find a nice place nearby. An uncomfortable silence followed. Tyler and Abigail exchanged glances before he took over. Actually, they won't need to look for a place. They'll be moving in here. The words didn't make sense at first. Here in my home. I don't understand, I said slowly. You mean they want to visit for an extended stay after the baby is born? No, Mom. Abigail said, her voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. They'll be living here permanently. We've decided this house is perfect for raising our family with Tyler's parents. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implication of her words sank in. But this is my home, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. Where would I stay? What happened next will forever be seared into my memory. Abigail looked me straight in the eye and said, You'll need to find somewhere else to live. The bluntness of her statement left me breathless. I looked around at their faces, Tyler smug, his parents carefully composed, and my daughter, my own flesh and blood, looking at me with detached indifference. You're asking me to leave my own home, the home your father and I built together. My voice cracked with disbelief. It's not just your home, Tyler interjected smoothly, and Abigail grew up here. This is her family home too, and now she needs it for her own family. But the house is in my name, I protested. Your father left it to me. Actually, Robert spoke up, his tone condescending. There are legal precedents for adult children having right to family properties, especially when elderly parents can no longer maintain them properly. Elderly, I was only 58 and in perfect health. We've noticed you struggling to keep up with the yard work, Sandra added with false concern. And that roof will need replacing soon. It's really too much responsibility for you alone. I felt ambushed. They had clearly been planning this for some time, coordinating their arguments against me. Where am I supposed to go? I asked again, my shock turning to desperation. That's when Tyler said the words that would change everything. You could rent an apartment. There are some senior living communities that might have openings. Those are for people in their 70s and 80s. I responded, my voice strengthening with indignation. I'm only 58 and still running my own business. Well, where do you want to go? Tyler asked with obvious irritation. This is my home. I don't want to go anywhere, I insisted. Then my daughter, my beautiful Abigail, whom I had cradled as a newborn and comforted through every childhood illness, looked at me and shrugged. You need to figure it out, Mom. Tyler's parents are moving in next week. But where should I go? I asked one more time, looking directly at my daughter, silently begging her to snap out of whatever spell Tyler had cast over her. Tyler snorted dismissively. Go to the dump for all we care. Just be out by Friday. The cruel words hung in the air. Sandra and Robert looked slightly uncomfortable but said nothing to contradict their son. Abigail stared at her hands, avoiding my gaze. Something inside me shifted in that moment. A strange calm washed over me, replacing the panic and hurt. I looked at these people, this family that was trying to discard me like unwanted furniture, and felt a clarity I hadn't experienced since before Frank's illness. I stood up slowly, maintaining my dignity. I see. Well, I'll need to pack my things. They seemed surprised by my calm acceptance, perhaps having expected tears or resistance. I went to my bedroom and began gathering essentials: clothes, toiletries, medications, and a few precious photos of Frank. I could feel them watching me, Tyler, even following to make sure I didn't take anything valuable, as if I would steal from my own home. When I had filled 2 suitcases, I walked them to my car. The 4 of them stood in the driveway watching my exodus with expressions ranging from satisfaction, Tyler, to mild discomfort, his parents, to blank detachment, Abigail. As I closed my trunk and prepared to drive away from the home I had loved for decades, I turned and gave them all a small, knowing smile. The expression clearly confused them. They had expected me to leave broken and defeated. Tyler frowned. "What are you smiling about?" I simply got into my car without answering and drove away, the smile still playing on my lips. They had no idea what was coming next. The moment I turned the corner and was out of sight of my home, the tears I had been holding back flooded forth. I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road through my tears. For nearly an hour, I sat in my car on the shoulder of Route 16, crying until I had no tears left. The sky had darkened by the time I composed myself enough to drive again. With nowhere else to go, I checked into the Pinewood Motel, a modest establishment on the edge of town. The room was clean but sparse, a far cry from the warm comfort of the home I had just been forced to abandon. Sitting on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the full emotional impact of what had happened washed over me again. My own daughter had thrown me away. The child I had nursed through fevers, taught to ride a bike, and helped move into her college dorm had looked me in the eye and told me to leave my own home. The cruelty was incomprehensible. With shaking hands, I called Janet, my best friend of 30 years. "Cheryl, what's wrong? You sound terrible." Janet's concerned voice came through the phone. Between sobs, I explained what had happened. Her gasps of shock and outrage were validating. I wasn't overreacting. This was truly as awful as it felt. "You come here right now," Janet insisted. "My guest room is yours for as long as you need it." "I don't want to impose," I protested weakly. "Nonsense. I'm texting you my address. I expect to see you in 20 minutes. Janet's immediate support was a lifeline. I checked out of the motel and drove to her comfortable townhouse across town. She was waiting at the door when I arrived, arms open for a hug that I desperately needed. That night, over a glass of wine, Janet listened as I poured out the whole story in greater detail. The gradual changes in Abigail Tyler's controlling behavior, his parents' critical attitudes, and the final devastating confrontation. "There's something that doesn't make sense," Janet said thoughtfully after I finished. "Didn't Frank make sure the house was protected in his will? I remember him talking about it when he was sick." Her question sparked a memory. Frank had indeed been very careful about our estate planning. He had insisted we meet with Harold, his attorney and longtime friend, to ensure everything was in order. "You should call Harold tomorrow," Janet suggested. "I bet there's something Tyler and his family don't know." The next morning, I called Harold's office and explained the situation. He immediately made time to see me that afternoon. Harold's office was warm and welcoming, much like the man himself. He had been Frank's friend since college, and his kind eyes reminded me of my late husband. "Cheryl, I'm so sorry about what's happened," he said after listening to my story. "But there's something very important your daughter and son-in-law don't seem to understand." He pulled out a file with my name on it and laid several documents on his desk. "The house and property are still entirely in your name. Frank was very specific about this when we updated your wills after his diagnosis. The house was to remain solely your property until you choose to sell it or transfer ownership." Relief washed over me. "So they can't just take it?" "Absolutely not. What they're attempting could actually be classified as elder abuse and unlawful eviction. They have zero legal right to force you out of your own home." Harold's confirmation renewed my strength, but it also raised a painful question. "Do you think Abigail knows this, or is Tyler manipulating her?" Harold considered this thoughtfully. "It's hard to say without speaking to her directly, but From what you've described about Tyler's behavior, I wouldn't be surprised if he's been feeding her misinformation. Despite the legal clarity, I was hesitant to immediately take action against my own daughter. Despite her cruelty, she was still my child and she was pregnant with my grandchild. What should I do, Harold? I asked. Legally, we could file for an emergency injunction today and have you back in your home by tomorrow, he explained. But if you want to give your daughter a chance to come to her senses first, we could wait. It's entirely your decision. After careful consideration, I decided to give Abigail one chance to make things right on her own. I would wait exactly 1 week before taking legal action. Perhaps in that time, she might realize the terrible mistake she was making. Let's prepare all the necessary documents, I told Harold, but hold off on filing anything until next week. For the next few days, I stayed with Janet, who was a godsend during this difficult time. She introduced me to her book club where I met several women who had faced their own challenges with adult children and difficult in-laws. Their stories and support helped me realize I wasn't alone. I reconnected with other friends I had somewhat neglected during Frank's illness and after his death. My friend Lisa, a real estate agent, took me to lunch and expressed outrage at my situation. You know, she said thoughtfully, your property has appreciated significantly over the years. The 5 acres alone would be worth a fortune to developers. Her comment made me wonder if Tyler's interest in my home had more to do with money than family sentiment. I shared this thought with Harold during our follow-up meeting. It's entirely possible, he agreed. Let me do some digging into Tyler's business ventures and financial situation. While Harold investigated, I focused on rebuilding my strength. Each day, my mindset shifted from victim to strategist. With the support of my friends and the knowledge that the law was on my side, I developed a comprehensive plan. By the end of the week, I felt transformed. The woman who had driven away from her home in tears was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Exactly 1 week after being forced from my home, I drove back up the familiar driveway. The sight that greeted me was shocking. A large dumpster sat in the front yard filled with what appeared to be my remaining belongings. The beautiful flower beds Frank and I had tenderly maintained for decades had been ripped out, leaving ugly patches of bare earth. A construction crew was digging a large hole in the backyard, the beginning of a swimming pool, I would later learn. I sat in my car for a moment, absorbing the violation of my property. Then, with resolute calm, I gathered the legal documents Harold had prepared and walked to my front door. I no longer had a key. They had changed the locks, so I rang the doorbell to my own home. Sandra opened the door, her expression shifting from casual disinterest to shock when she recognized me. "Cheryl, what are you doing here?" she stammered. "I've come to speak with everyone," I replied evenly. "I believe you're all home right now." Without waiting for her response, I walked past her into my living room. The furniture had been rearranged, my cherished family photos replaced with generic artwork, and moving boxes were stacked against one wall. Sandra's designer touch was already evident in new throw pillows and expensive-looking knickknacks placed around the room. "Robert Tyler," Sandra called out, panic edging her voice. "You better come here." Robert appeared from the kitchen, a sandwich in hand. "What the hell?" he muttered when he saw me. Tyler bounded down the stairs moments later, his face darkening when he saw me standing in the living room. "You need to leave immediately, Del," he demanded. "This is private property." "Yes, it is, son," I agreed calmly. My private property." "We've been through this," Tyler said dismissively. "Abigail has rights to this house, and we've decided to live here with my parents." "Where is my daughter, Tynes?" I asked, ignoring his claims. "She's resting upstairs. The pregnancy is making her tired," Sandra explained, seemingly trying to diffuse the tension. At that moment, we heard a door open upstairs, and Abigail appeared at the top of the staircase. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked slowly, coming down the stairs. Before I could answer, we all heard raised voices from outside. Through the window, I could see 2 of the construction workers arguing heatedly. "What's going on out there?" Robert asked, moving to the window. "They're probably realizing they don't have proper permits for that swimming pool," I remarked casually. "I called the county inspector yesterday." Tyler's face reddened with anger. "You had no right to interfere. This is our property now, and we can do whatever renovations we want." It was time to reveal the truth. I opened my briefcase and removed the folder Harold had prepared. Tyler, there seems to be a significant misunderstanding here, I said, keeping my voice level. This property is legally mine. It has never been in Abigail's name, nor will it be unless I choose to transfer ownership. I laid out the deed, Frank's will, and the property tax statements, all in my name, on the coffee table. These are legally certified copies, I explained. The originals are safe with my attorney, who is prepared to file for an emergency injunction if necessary. A stunned silence fell over the room. Abigail slowly approached the table and picked up the deed, her hands trembling slightly. But Tyler said he told me that as Dad's only child, I automatically inherited half the house when he died. She said, confusion evident in her voice. That's not how inheritance works in our state, I explained gently. Your father and I had a clear estate plan. The house remains solely in my name until I decide otherwise. Tyler's face had drained of color. Robert picked up one of the documents and examined it carefully. As a retired judge, he immediately recognized the legal validity of what I was showing them. Tyler, Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. Did you tell Abigail she had legal claim to this property without verifying it? Tyler sputtered, looking from his father to Abigail. I thought everyone knows family homes pass to children. Not when there's a surviving spouse and a clear will stating otherwise. Robert snapped, professional embarrassment evident in his tone. You've put us in a legally precarious position, son. Sandra stepped forward, placing a hand on her husband's arm. Surely we can work something out. We've already sold our house. The new owners take possession next week. That was premature, I replied, not unkindly. You made assumptions about a property that was never available to you. This is ridiculous, Tyler exploded. We'll fight this in court. We've already moved in. We have established residency. Robert shook his head sharply. No, we haven't. Not legally. It's been less than 10 days and we entered under false pretenses. He turned to me with newfound respect in his eyes. Cheryl, I owe you an apology. It seems we were misled about the situation. I looked around this room at their stunned faces, finally resting my gaze on my daughter. Abigail looked shell-shocked, her pregnancy-enhanced features pale with distress. Here's what's going to happen, I said with quiet authority. Everyone will vacate my property within 48 hours. Any damage to the house or grounds will be documented by my attorney, and compensation will be required. You can't do this, Tyler protested, but his voice had lost its conviction. I can and I am, I replied simply. This is not a negotiation. It's a courtesy notification before legal proceedings begin. I gathered my documents and returned them to my briefcase. I'll be staying with a friend until you've removed yourselves and your belongings. I suggest you use this time to find alternative housing arrangements. As I turned to leave, Abigail stepped forward. Mom, wait, I don't understand. Tyler said, I cut her off gently. We'll talk later, Abigail. Right now, I think you and your husband have some things to discuss. With that, I walked out the door, leaving them to process the bombshell I had dropped. As I drove away, I noticed Tyler's parents engaged then in what appeared to be a heated argument with their son in the driveway. That evening, as I was having dinner with Janet, my phone rang. It was Abigail, her voice thick with tears. Mom, can we talk, please? I've made a terrible mistake. 2 days later, I returned to my home to find Tyler and his parents gone. Their hastily packed boxes and suitcases had left scuff marks on my hardwood floors. The swimming pool excavation in the backyard remained an ugly scar on the landscape. Abigail was sitting alone at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen from crying. When she saw me enter, she rose awkwardly, her pregnant belly making quick movements difficult. They left this morning, she said quietly. Tyler's parents are staying at the Holiday Inn until they can find a rental. I set my purse down and took a seat across from her. The distance between us felt greater than the few feet of table separating us. Where's Tyler? I asked. He went with them, she replied, not meeting my eyes. We had a huge fight after you left. He admitted some things. Over the next hour, Abigail revealed the full extent of Tyler's manipulations. He had been planning this takeover for months, convincing Abigail that she had legal rights to my home because she was Frank's daughter. He had deliberately driven a wedge between Abigail and me, subtly criticizing me and reframing my actions in the worst possible light. He told me you were being selfish by living alone in such a big house. She confessed, tears streaming down her face. He said you were mentally declining after Dad died, that you couldn't maintain the property anymore, that it would be a kindness to move you somewhere smaller. And you believed him. I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. He was so convincing, Mom. He'd point out little things, like when you forgot to water a plant or pay a bill on time, and suggest it was evidence of your decline. He'd remind me how depressed you were after Dad died and say you never fully recovered. The calculated cruelty of Tyler's manipulation was breathtaking. He had used my grief against me, twisting normal human responses to loss into evidence of incompetence. But there was more. Abigail revealed that Tyler had severe gambling debts I knew nothing about. He had been counting on selling my house to pay them off. He wanted to convince you to sign the house over to us, then sell it to developers. Lisa was right. They've been trying to buy up properties in this area for a new subdivision. Tyler had already had preliminary talks with them. Without your knowledge? I asked, stunned by the depth of his deception. Abigail nodded miserably. He said it would be a fresh start for us. We'd use part of the money to buy a condo in the city and invest the rest in his business ideas. And his parents, they were willing to participate in this scheme. They didn't know about the gambling debts or his plan to sell, Abigail admitted. He told them we wanted to create a multi-generational home for the baby. They were genuinely excited about being close to their grandchild. As Abigail continued to explain, I began to understand how thoroughly Tyler had isolated her from me. He had intercepted my text messages, deleted voicemails, and made excuses for why Abigail couldn't join me for our regular lunch dates. He had gradually taken control of every aspect of her life, from their finances to her friendships. I feel so stupid, she whispered, hanging her head. How could I not see what was happening? How could I treat you so terribly? Her shame was palpable, and despite my hurt, my maternal instinct to comfort her surfaced. But I knew we couldn't simply pretend the past few months hadn't happened. Abigail, I love you. You're my daughter, and nothing will change that. But what happened here goes beyond a simple misunderstanding. You chose to believe the worst about me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. She nodded, accepting the truth of my words. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness at all. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything between us. What will you do now? I finally asked. About Tyler the baby, everything. Abigail took a deep breath. I've already called a divorce attorney. Tyler crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I won't raise my child with someone capable of such manipulation and deceit. Her decision surprised me. Despite everything, I hadn't expected her to immediately move toward divorce. That's a big step. Are you sure? When I confronted him with the truth, his first concern was the money, not me or the baby, she said bitterly. That told me everything I needed to know about his priorities. Over the next few hours, we had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. There were tears, painful truths, and eventually the beginning of healing. We established clear boundaries for rebuilding our relationship, acknowledging that trust would take time to reconstruct. I don't expect to move back in here, Abigail said. I know I've lost that right. I considered her words carefully. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, still carrying my grandchild. The thought of her struggling alone during this vulnerable time didn't sit right with me. The small guest house on the property, I said slowly. The one your dad used as his home office. It has its own entrance and kitchenette. You could stay there until you figure out your next steps. Relief washed over her face. Are you sure? After everything I did? It won't be easy, and we have a lot of work to do on our relationship. But yes, I'm sure. In the days that followed, Tyler made several desperate attempts to contact both Abigail and me. He left voicemails alternating between threats and tearful apologies. When those didn't work, he sent his parents to plead his case. He's getting help for his gambling, Sandra told Abigail during an unexpected visit. He made mistakes, but he loves you. Abigail stood firm. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't try to steal from family. Her newfound strength made me proud even as I recognized the difficult road ahead for her as a single mother. A week after the confrontation, Abigail received divorce papers from her attorney. Seeing her name printed on those legal documents made the situation painfully real, and she broke down crying in my arms. "I never thought my life would turn out like this," she sobbed. Divorced before 30, pregnant, moving back to my mother's property in disgrace. "Not in disgrace," I corrected her gently. "In recovery. There's a world of difference." The following day, I accompanied Abigail to her prenatal appointment. Seeing my grandchild on the ultrasound screen, a little girl we learned, was a powerful moment of reconnection. As we listened to the strong heartbeat together, Abigail squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry I almost took this from you," she whispered. "But you didn't," I replied, wiping away a tear. "And that's what matters now." 6 months have passed since that fateful Sunday dinner when my world was turned upside down. Looking back now, I can see that crisis as a painful but necessary turning point that ultimately led to healing and new beginnings. My home has been transformed not by Tyler's unwelcome renovations, but by thoughtful changes Abigail and I made together. We repaired the damage to the backyard, turning the half-dug pool into a beautiful koi pond that Frank would have loved. Inside, we reorganized spaces to accommodate both our needs while respecting each other's privacy. Abigail has shown remarkable resilience. After the initial shock of her marriage's collapse, she threw herself into rebuilding her life. She returned to her marketing career, arranging to work remotely 3 days a week. Her company was surprisingly supportive once they understood her situation, even offering extended maternity leave when the time came. The greatest joy in these months of reconstruction has been the birth of my granddaughter, Lily Frances, named after her grandfather. Holding that tiny bundle in my arms for the first time washed away the last lingering bitterness I had been harboring. Lily's innocent face, so like Abigail's when she was born, reminded me that life continues to offer second chances and new beginnings. Tyler's legal battles with Abigail continued for some time. He initially contested the divorce, then made unreasonable demands regarding property division. His gambling debts came to light during financial discovery, strengthening Abigail's case. Eventually faced with incontrovertible evidence of his deception and his parents' refusal to fund a protracted legal fight, he agreed to the divorce terms. Surprisingly, Sandra and Robert reached out with a lengthy apology letter several months after the confrontation. They explained that they had been unaware of the extent of Tyler's deception and expressed deep regret for their role in attempting to displace me from my home. They asked for an opportunity to have a relationship with their granddaughter despite the circumstances. After careful consideration and discussions with Abigail, I agreed to a carefully bounded reconciliation. They would not visit my home, but we occasionally meet at neutral locations where they can spend time with Lily. These visits are still somewhat awkward, but for Lily's sake, we maintain civil relations. The experience of nearly losing my home to manipulation inspired me to take action beyond my personal situation. With Harold's help, I established a small foundation to assist older women facing housing insecurity or predatory family situations. We offer legal guidance, temporary housing assistance, and emotional support. The foundation, named Frank's Promise, after my late husband, has already helped several women stand their ground and protect their rights. Through this journey, I've learned profound lessons about standing up for yourself at any age. Society often expects older women, particularly widows, to quietly step aside and accommodate others' needs at the expense of their own. Breaking free from that expectation was empowering in ways I never anticipated. I've also gained wisdom about recognizing manipulation and emotional abuse, even when it comes disguised as concern or family obligation. The red flags I initially dismissed with Tyler now seem so obvious in retrospect. I share these insights through monthly workshops at the local community center, helping others identify and resist similar situations. Perhaps the most important practical lesson I've learned is the vital importance of having proper legal documentation for your home and assets. Frank's foresight in ensuring our estate planning was clear and comprehensive quite literally saved my home. I now advocate for others to review their legal protections before crisis strikes. The bonds of family have been tested severely through this experience, but they've proven remarkably resilient. Abigail and I have rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect that was perhaps missing before. We still have occasional difficult moments when memories of her betrayal surface, but we work through them together. I've found unexpected freedom in setting clear boundaries. I no longer accommodate others at the expense of my own well-being. I've learned to say no without guilt and to stand firm in the face of pressure. This newfound strength has transformed not just my family relationships, but my friendships and business interactions as well. Finding purpose in helping others through similar struggles has been deeply healing. Each time a woman walks into our foundation office uncertain and afraid and leaves standing taller with a plan to protect herself, I feel Frank smiling down on me. This work has become my passion, giving meaning to the painful experience I endured. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have turned out if I had simply accepted being displaced from my home. I would have lost not just my property, but my sense of self-worth and agency. By standing up for myself, I not only reclaimed my home, but discovered strength I never knew I possessed. As I sit on my porch swing watching Abigail push Lily in the garden swing Frank built years ago, I realize that sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply give us the unexpected push we need to reclaim our power. In trying to take everything from me, Tyler inadvertently gave me the opportunity to rebuild a more authentic life. I wonder how many of you have faced similar challenges with family members who underestimated your strength or tried to take advantage of your kindness. Have you ever had to stand firm against someone you love to protect yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might give someone else the courage they need to stand up for themselves. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and create the life you deserve regardless of your age or circumstances. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to face whatever challenges come your way.